A big hello to you. It's so great to see you and I hope I find you well. We're not in the loft today. Actually, I'm showing off something that you've already seen on TV by now, and I can finally reveal the super secret project. This is one that I undertook with Les Cliff, and it's been on Hornby A Model World. You'll have also seen it on the pages of BRM, but it was an amazing thing to build. Really enjoyed it, did it really quite quickly as well, and I'm going to show you in today's video all the ins and outs of this amazing rotating layout. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from Rocar Prototype Models, where detail, accuracy and value for money go hand in hand. With their debut model of SafePack auto racks wowing model railroaders alike, now is your chance to order these in road names and configurations to accurately reproduce auto rack workings from 1974 to the present day on your model railroad. Order today from rocarmodels.com and see the full range for yourself. We'd also like to thank War World Scenics and Golden Valley Hobbies for the support that they gave to help make this layout possible. Check them out at the links down below. So I'm really excited to finally be able to show you the ins and outs of the amazing rotating Four Seasons layout. You might remember in Series 1 of Hornby A Model World, I made, along with the amazing modeller Paul Tyre, the upside-down Escher-inspired layout. And I was asked back to do another build for Series 2. So I had to really think outside the box. How could we top that? And one of the watchwords for this series that they wanted me to try and incorporate was recycling. So of course, the obvious starting point was that rotating upside down layout. And that is precisely what this started out as. It's the bottom tier of that with the tower completely removed. We retained that rotating feature, and that allowed this idea of having the train almost stationary in front of the camera lens and the scenery going past as the train travels between all four seasons and back again. It's a bit like those Scooby-Doo cartoons where all of the characters suddenly up in the air and start and the scenery is what is moving behind them and it keeps repeating. And I really like that idea for this. So let's talk us through this. We've got our base here, which is just a layout that we're going to recycle.
It's literally showing people that some of the times the packaging that you actually get your modelling stuff in can be used.
The shape of that mountain, the little hillock, has really come together. The plaster bandage has just made it a great unified whole. And this next stage, we're going to use these watercolour paints and then...
Plaster soaks up the paint.
Yeah.
But also, sort of instantly, you start to get to feel that there is a difference between just the white plaster and making these look almost...
And you can see it, it's actually drawn into the natural texture of the plaster cloth, and it starts to give you that rock look. What the TV company also asked about is they wanted to include some water features. My mind immediately turned to Les Cliff, who's an amazing modeller that I've worked with on a number of projects before and actually did the back scene for Weir Yard. And so we kind of brainstormed this, and what we thought was it would be really nice to have a central lake in the model that could be the focal point for the four seasons and with a river and waterfall off each of them. And in the series, when we were filming it, that's what they wanted to really focus on. So we actually went out on location to look at waterfalls. And it was the hottest, driest summer on record. And what that meant was that all the waterfalls that we looked at didn't really have a lot of water going over them. But on the model, it's a really good demonstration of what you can do to set the season on your model layout. So a lot of the different visual cues, quite apart from winter. Winter's easy, a bit of snow, a bit of ice, and everybody knows it's winter. But how do you replicate spring, summer, and autumn? And a lot of it is in the choice of flowers, the choice of foliage, and that river and waterfall as well, with the different quantities of water. And we've got the white water going on both in the spring and the autumn, and this shows rivers that are in flood either with the autumnal rains or with the spring meltwater. And Les and I recreated this by using some white oil paints streaked into the resin that we used from World Scenics to do not just the lake but the water in the rivers as well. Also from the World Scenics range, we've used a lot of the different blends of static grass, different lengths as well. But the first thing we need to do before we can get them to adhere to the model is build up a layer of the basing glue, and then we've got something for that to stick to. It's really quick, really easy. I'm going to charge the hopper with some of the static grass, and then very, very quickly you can see the static grass come alive. And actually using clumps of the long 12mm static grass to get that lovely clumpy stuff that you get on the edges of anything wet and watery. We also did a lot of the tree making kits, and this is a brilliant area that you can really set the season. And for spring, we went with a lot of pink blossom. You've got that cherry blossom. It's quite an eye-catching thing that really sets spring apart. Moving further round, we've actually used some of the flower scatters from the range, including the blue for the bluebells, and then we've got the sheep with the lambs, and they're getting their winter coats sheared off. And this is the first of one of the several Easter eggs that we've got in the layout. So we've got a little fence alongside the railway here. We've got the man shearing the sheep, and he's got his back turned to the sheep that have found the gap in the fence, and you can see the two black sheep are on the wrong side of the tracks. And it was just a little throwaway joke that Les and I put into this. Moving back to the waterfall, I also thought it would be really nice to have the little kid in boots just climbing over a felled log over the stream. And it's another thing that you can do with leftover sea foam when you've been making your trees. You get these kind of woody bits, and sprayed up, they make great fallen trees, and a little bit of the algae-coloured scatter from the World Scenics range just makes them look mossy and neglected. So moving now into the summer scene, the idea behind this is in summer it's warmer, it's drier, so you've got a much more lush looking grass. And whereas in spring we used a lot more of the different green scatters to build up a kind of rough and ready texture, a lot of moss in there, and also picking the colours of the flowers. With the summer, what we've gone for is a lot more of a lush green colour with the static grass pass over the hillside. Now the hillside itself is just polystyrene, scrap polystyrene, with some of the blocks wrapped up in some ribbons of the plaster bandage to make the standout rock features. We also used some of the Woodland Scenics cast your own rock moulds, and these are really great as well. And Les has got a really great technique whereby you use colour washes over the base model form before the static grass goes over.
So where some of the grass may have stuck that we don't want it, we can wipe it back to reveal the rocks underneath. If we want to put some more bushes and things on there as we move forward, we can do that. We can also add some more paint colour into there to highlight anything. You can even start to mix other things in like polyfiller, tile grout and things like that to give a little bit more definition here and there. But generally speaking, that's now looking like the rocks are pushing through sort of the grass that's there, and maybe even one or two areas just on the top you can remove some of the grass to reveal a bit of the rock underneath.
It's a really simple and easy technique that the summer area does show off to great effect. Again, with the water feature, we've got a much lower level of water, much less in the way of white crests on the water, and we've got different vegetation. We've gone for different colours, different lengths of the clumpy grass, and the trees too. We've got a much fuller, greener feel to the foliage choices that we've gone with. We've also got a few cameos here. So we've got the basket weaver whiling away a summer evening, weaving baskets underneath the shade of the really big feature tree that we've included. Moving further round, we've got a film crew on display. This is another one of the many cameos that we included in this model to create lots of visual interest. And with this, it's also a nod to the film crew that came and visited on a number of different occasions. We thought that it would be a great way to use these figures from the Noch range to immortalise them in the model. I used the Cinderella figures too, because these were ones I bought at a show and they just look great. And I've been working on a number of period dramas with my day job, and it just felt like a really great mix to add them in. The moors behind with the grassland, we've kind of gone for a Heathcliff, Wuthering Heights look, and it all comes together really, really well. At this point, the scenery is blended into the autumnal area, and I actually discovered that this was my favourite of all the seasons to create, because I really love making the autumnal trees. We start with a base coat of yellows on the trees and then top them off with a dusting of red. All of these from the flower range from Warworld Scenics, and it really does make a great looking autumnal tree. The secret is in the last dusting of the red on the model. Less is often more, but it really tones the yellow down and gives you this wonderful autumnal feel. We've also got a lot of the forest floor scatter underneath, and it's important before you place the tree to use some more of the yellows and reds to make it look like you've got fallen leaves underneath the trees. It's something in all the seasons we've really tried to pay close attention to, that you actually need to make the tree feel like it's a part of the landscape and not just plonked into it. So a very careful choice of scatters underneath the tree is important to make it feel like the tree has been there an awfully long time. In the autumnal area as well, we've gone for somewhat more flow on the river. We've got the white crests going in there, but then we've also gone for a little bit of the summery feel of the green grasses, but mixed in some of the straw colours as well to give that feel of grass that is on the turn. And we've still used a little bit of the red flower material just to bring that out and make it come alive. The grasses too, we've got rid of some of the flowers and we're going back towards a slightly more straw coloured feel in some of the overtones that we've used in the static grass. In the pond too, we did 2 passes with the resin. And after the first pass, we glued in some of the forest scatter. And this creates a really nice effect of autumnal detritus that has kind of sunk to the bottom of the lake. Unlike the summer area where we've deliberately kept it nice and clear and clean, this gives a much more murky feel to the autumnal waters. The next area is pretty much the most eye-catching of all 4 of the seasons, and with a winter scene there's some radically different modelling techniques that we've looked into doing. The water in the river is done to look like ice, and this was actually done with a hot glue gun, which is a great departure from any other modelling techniques for water that you'd use for any other season. Just running along the strips and just gently pushing them in and moulding them whilst they're still pliable and warm created this really good river of ice effect. And just to finish it off, we coated it over with a little bit of the resin just to bond it all together and give it a little bit of a glassy feel. The trees too, we've done away with any of the foliage, so we built up the trees with the basic structure that we'd used for all 3 other seasons, but then it was just a dusting of the soft flake snow scatter, which gave that air of freshly fallen snow and a little bit of frost as well, and it really makes these trees stand out. We also used some of the trees from the Knock range, which really did make some great feature trees to go with the Santa Claus and the reindeer. And this is the cameo that we chose for the main focus of this scene. The snow that covers all of the grass area, it's really important to actually have static grass underneath. You can't just apply this straight onto your bare baseboards, otherwise it looks a little bit silly. So for the static grass that goes underneath, we chose some of the shorter fibres and went much more for the browns, yellows and less so of the greens. Once the static grass was in place and secured, we then went over the top using the 0.5mm white snow static grass, and this creates a beautiful effect. You can then go back and very carefully clear the rail heads, and the train will chug through this landscape with the snow completely covering the ballast, which I think is a really iconic look. At the bottom of the waterfall, we again used the long straw-coloured static grass glued in clumps, and then we went over that with a blasting over of the soft flake snow to give it a really icy, frosty look, taking care not to get too much of that in the water area. Up in the lake, in the centre of the model, we've really gone to town in the winter area. The water started out exactly the same as the other 3 seasons. We just did it as one pour of the cast resin. But once it had set, I went over the winter area with very, very fine emery cloth. And this gives this slightly opaque, icy look to it, which was then a great starting point to glue in some of the skaters from the Scenecraft range. And that really just gave us a great focal point for the winter scene up there. And that brings us right back again to the spring scene. The final piece of the puzzle for this is actually the train that was running, and this was entirely chosen to add to the scene. The locomotive itself you'll recognise as being the Hornby M7, but in exactly the same running number and livery that's forthcoming in the catalogue, and this was actually a fortuitous happy accident. I bought it second-hand, professionally renumbered by the previous owner, about a week before Hornby made that announcement. So it felt that it was the perfect locomotive to run on this when we were filming, because I figured that that locomotive would still be pretty fresh in the catalogue at the point that the programme went out. And it made it a really interesting focal point that was on message for Hornby. The coaches too, I decided to go with the short generic pre-grouping ones in the really eye-catching London and South Western Railway livery. The circle of track that's on this layout is actually radius 1, so it's quite a tight curve, and I felt that these carriages not just enhanced the scene, but also didn't look too odd going round such a tight curve, so they were the obvious choice to marry up with that M7, and that's really the reason why the train you saw on the TV show was that train. Well, I hope you really enjoyed today's video taking a closer look at the Four Seasons rotating layout that we built for Hornby A Model World. That was me and Les, and really we had a great time doing this. And there's a lot of interesting different techniques for doing the 4 different seasons, with a particular focus on a waterfall in each season. It was so much fun to build, and I'd like to put out there a big thank you to War World Scenics, who provided a lot of the scenic material that we used in this build. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below. Have you been watching Hornby A Model World? What did you think about it? And more importantly, what did you think about this rotating Four Seasons build that Les and I put together for the show? I'd love to hear from you, and it's also a great way of chatting with other like-minded enthusiasts. Don't forget as well to check us out over on Patreon, where we've got a number of different tiers of reward to suit any and every pocket, and you too can help the channel to keep making the videos that you want to see. Do also check out our extensive merchandise shop just in the link underneath the video, and until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. Additional support comes from Rocar Prototype Models, where detail, accuracy and value for money go hand in hand. With their debut model of SafePack auto racks wowing model railroaders alike, now is your chance to order these in road names and configurations to accurately reproduce auto rack workings from 1974 to the present day on your model railroad. Order today from rocarmodels.com and see the full range for yourself. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N. from NC, NYMR-ish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 class, Ian Coulson, Alan Dickerson, Eddie Popper, Karen Nichol, Medwin Williams, Crossways Point Junction, 3B Rail, Jennifer Horton, and James Beckett. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.